Hello, my name is Tom Nussbaum. I'm going to read to you today from my memoir, An H of a Life. It's called An H of a Life because each of the three sections has a title, a one-word title that begins with the letter H. The first section explores my growing up years and being raised as a first-generation American Jew. It is called Hebe. In hindsight, I should have known my mother was a psychologically complex, complicated, and contradictory woman even before we were officially introduced. After all, she was a woman whose Jewish ancestry and faith were deeply important to her, but who gave birth to her firstborn, a son, me, in a Catholic hospital. I was doomed from the start, it appears, to face conflict and contradictions in my self-image, identity, and relationship with my mother. Providence Hospital had been founded by the Sisters of Providence and was linked historically to the Catholic Church. One would think a doctor and his patient, both post-World War II Jewish European immigrants, would have sought a more neutral hospital for my birth, especially when the patient was as dedicated a Jew as was my mother. But the doctor had a professional affiliation with Providence, and as a result, I popped out of a Jewish womb and into a world of nuns, rosary beads, and Catholic shame, embossed with Jewish guilt. Fortunately, there were no Jews-only hospitals in 1948 Seattle. Anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination may have been present in the sleepy Queen City of the Northwest then, but no hospitals were set aside for Jews only. No medical centers had names like Chutzpah Hospital, Kosher Clinic, or Talmud Med. Thank you, Jesus. No hospitals were forced to cater exclusively to their Jewish clientele, luring them with maternity wing window signs advertising circumcision sale, 10% off. So there I was, a Jew delivered in a Catholic hospital. Oy vey, mea culpa. That seemingly benign contradiction about my birth and mixed message about my identity serve, I believe, as the perfect point to begin telling the tale of my life. But more importantly, it is the logical place to begin exploring the quirks, patterns, and psychological complexities of the mind of Mom. I'm quite certain her obstetrician noticed them early on, the nonstop chatter, the chirpy, almost childlike manner in which she laughed and spoke, the unique, simplistic, usually unrealistic view of the world, the contradictory statements, the constant negativity, and the obsessions. Oh Lord, the obsessions. All Mom's thoughts, concerns, opinions, and conversations about people included at least one of the following subjects: whether or not they were Jewish, how fat or slim they were, and their zodiac sign. She also managed to include money in all her thoughts or conversations, which is obviously a cliche, but with Mom, it was an obsession. I know all too well about her go-to topics because she constantly shared her thoughts with me. Constantly. Especially during the 15 years after Dad died. And she shared all her thoughts with anyone else too, whether or not she knew them. All her thoughts, all of them. I wonder if the doctor, after he swatted my butt, after I gulped my first breath of air, and after I had my first cry, my first plea for help, warned me about what I was up against. Here, kid, this is your mother Elizabeth, he might have said. I've gotten to know her over the past few months, and she's a bit... Oh, you'll figure it out in time. A few years later, while Mom and I were in Providence's wide, dusky halls, why, I don't recall, a nun in a full, old-fashioned habit briskly bounded around a corner. Her unexpected appearance startled me a bit, but did not really scare me. I was more curious than frightened by this woman in an enormous flowing black outfit and strange hair-hiding hat. I quickly stepped closer to Mom, seeking safety, reassurance, and an explanation. As the nun swept by, my puzzled gaze followed her down the hall. My mother giggled a chirp of a laugh and said something she probably thought would be calming comforting, and appropriate. Mom might have said something like, "She's not Jewish, you know. I wonder how fat she is. I can't tell with all that black material covering her up, but I bet she's fat, and that's why she chose to be a nun. So the clothes would hide her fat." And then with a sigh she would add, "Oh, I hope she isn't a Sagittarius. They don't make good nuns. I think she'd be much happier if she had taken a job that makes more money." But whatever my mother said ended quickly as her focus returned to whatever her mission, her purpose for being there in the first place had been. My comfort, my security was quickly forgotten. In Mom's world, that image of the nun in the hallway, so powerful and long-lasting to me, was not about me or the nun. It was about Mom. It gave her an opportunity to talk about things that interested her, even if her comments were unsolicited, even if they were illogical, even if they made her sound a bit crazy. The next piece I'm going to read is from the section about my career as a special ed instructional assistant. And it really covers my interview process when I got hired for the job. The 1992-1993 school year had just begun when I called and scheduled a job interview with the Seattle School District, and therefore the special education assistant position for which I intended to apply were already filled, and I was told I would be applying for the position of substitute assistant. This could lead to a permanent position at one school, the voice on the telephone added, if I was patient. I was interviewed by a kindly older man, a retired teacher who was volunteering his time as an interviewer. First, he ascertained I, in fact, met the minimum requirements for the job, which at the time were at least 2 years of college and several reliable references. He then quickly scanned my resume, and when he saw I had graduated from Queen Anne High School, he began asking me which teachers I had had there. He, it turned out, knew several and shared a number of anecdotes about them. All were irrelevant, most were boring. But I figured he was making small talk to relax me before he posed the more challenging and revealing job interview questions. I do not recall, however, if those questions ever materialized. I do not recall actually being asked any questions directly pertaining to my qualifications for the position I was applying. It was, in the end, a pleasant, quick, shallow exchange, and after about 10 minutes, my interviewer told me to report back several days later. As I walked to my car, I thought I had just gone through the first step, a screening perhaps, and that a more in-depth interview would take place when I reported back. Imagine my surprise then, when I returned days later to find myself curiously peering into a large room filled with people who appeared to be waiting for a meeting to begin. As I stood in the doorway, I was warmly welcomed by a jovial woman and handed a packet of papers. It was not until I was comfortably seated and opened the packet that I saw the heading on its top page. It said, "Orientation." I had been hired to work for the Seattle School District without realizing it. As substitutes, we learned at the orientation we could be sent to any school in the district, an elementary school, a middle school, or a high school, and we could be assigned any level or type of special needs. One day we were told we could be working with medically fragile elementary school children who needed to be lifted from wheelchairs and toileted. The next day we could be assisting high school age students with severe behavioral issues, a lot of anger, emotional problems, and arrest records. The most disappointing thing we were told, however, was it could take up to 2 years for us to secure a permanent position at a school. The patience referred to by the voice on the phone when I first called the school district now seemed to be an understatement, and a cruel one at that. The first day I was available, Monday, I was assigned to Nathan Hale High School. On Thursday, I was sent back to Nathan Hale. Because I had already spent a day there, I felt quite relaxed from the moment I arrived. I was, after all, somewhat familiar with the routine in the classroom, the staff with which I was working, and the personalities and needs of all the students. I also found myself much more aware of my surroundings than I had been in the nervous commotion of my first day on the job, and began to appreciate how much high schools had changed in the 25 years since I had been in one. Again, by day's end, I felt a sense of accomplishment. I felt I had done a good job, but I had no idea how good a job I had done until the students had boarded their buses and departed. In an obviously planned move, the teachers quickly surrounded me. To my surprise, they offered me a permanent job in their department. I was stunned. The alleged potentially 2-year wait for a permanent position I had been warned about turned out to be a mere 4 days. That was hardly a test of patience. Of course, I took the position. So that was from my memoir, An H of a Life. I have also written 3 novels, 2 of which I have here, The Boy in the Book, The Dark Blue Heart. All my books are available on Amazon. I thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I wish you well. Thank you.